I'm going to begin with a topic that's related to performance. So in the workbook, this is enhancement DDMC-12828. So let me just bring this back to show you. So the first topic I'm going to cover it up here in the workbook, DDMC 12828. Okay, like that. Now, the way to explain this is we have the new interface for the various CAD applications. I'm going to use Solid Edge as my example. When you load something from DDM into the supported CAD application, and this specifically relates to Solid Edge, SolidWorks, and today we're going to see the IronCAD, the new IronCAD interface as well. So if I hop into DDM, I'm looking for, so I'm going to go to my workshop folder here. This is my workshop folder, and inside here I've got an assembly. Now, when you load the assembly, rather than loading every file individually, what we have turned on by default is batch downloading. So when I say load, you see here the first 5 lines says batch downloading. When the load is finished, I'll just explain that a little bit more. So this load took 8 seconds, and as we can see here, the first thing that it did was it batch downloaded 2 files, okay, which totaled 83.1 megabytes, and then 50 files, 2632, because it's much quicker to batch and compress the files to bring them from the server to the client machine. So the thing that we want to just touch on to show you, I can clear this out now, is I can just clear my working folder, and we're going to hop into the DDM administration tool. So if I go into DDM administration, there is a setting where you can adjust. So if I go into system, I want to be in admin settings, file server. I said I'd prepared this, didn't I? Sorry, admin settings, file server. I thought I'd done this. Settings, file server. So in this area here, you can set the maximum batch size here, or the maximum number of files per batch. So I would recommend leaving this alone, but if you're having any issues related to loading, for example, large assemblies across a wide area network, if you are on a VPN, then this might help you by adjusting those settings. Only use it if you have a problem. If you're not sure, contact the support desk and somebody will help you with it. So that is the first enhancement. The second enhancement, still in the administration tool, is related to the free search. Now, hopefully everybody will be familiar with the fact that we are transitioning from an old administration client to a new administration client. This is the new client here. Now, previously what happened is, and I'll show you as the example, if I go into workflow, it will open the old administration tool. Okay, the old administration tool is now only for editing workflow. So this is purely the workflow editor now, and there's no option to jump back to the old, the new admin client, sorry. And you'll notice that it doesn't automatically close the other admin tool when, previously when you hopped between them, it closed the other one you were moving from. Now, the first of the topics in here is the free search. So under System, Free Search, the capabilities are exactly the same, and the free search window has now been moved into the new admin client. And for example, this is used if you want to include certain attributes in your free search capability within DDM. You can limit the number of attributes it's searching on in order to increase the performance of that search facility. One thing worth pointing out is if you have a large number of attributes, if you right click on the column header, you can show a search panel here, which might be quite useful if you're just filtering down looking for something. So I quite like this search capability. So this is DDMC 5789. The next enhancement is DDMC 5790, which is related to file types. If I look at file types here, again, this has been moved from the old admin tool into the new admin tool, and this is where you have the ability to associate thumbnail or icons with your file extensions, your MIME types. If I use the example of this particular one is for SolidWorks configurations, and you can see here I've created or modified the standard icon so I know when something is a particular configuration. Okay, so the enhancement is that we've moved this into the new admin tool. The next one, again in a similar vein, is DDMC 5793, and we've moved the maintenance of workbenches into this new admin client. And if we look under maintenance workbenches, okay, if I look at a workbench for the current user, let's say Stuart McBurney, that is me, so here it will show you any items that are on this particular user's workbench. Again, we've just moved this from the old admin tool to the new admin tool. Now, the next enhancement on page 4 of the document, the one at the top, is DDMC 8536. What we've added here is the ability to remove a folder from the workbench as well. So we've always had the ability to remove files from a workbench, but now we can remove folders as well. Remove from workbench. If I look in the DDM tool here, if I go to the workbench, we can see that I've got a change order has been referenced onto my workbench. The administrator now has the ability to remove that from the workbench. If I go back in here, refresh the screen, it has been removed. Okay, the next enhancement, which is DDMC 5783, new DDM administration place for links. Now, in the old admin tool, it was called, what was it called? Links. It was just called links, and it was under attributes, links. What we've now done is we've separated them out to BOM level attributes and folder content attributes. If you don't know what they are for, let's look at the folder content attributes first. These attributes, if I, for example, go and look at a change order, let me open it into its own window. So for a change order, I've got some additional attributes here called stock quantity, stock action, order quantity. Those attributes are not attributes on the folder, and they're not attributes on the items within the folder, but on the relationship between the two. If you right click on the column header, you see we have folder attributes, the link attributes, stock quantity, action, etc. So these can be very, very useful for various different business processes. The enhancement is that we have now moved this into its own area called folder contents. Okay, what we've done is we've actually doubled this up, because if you're looking at folders and you're not in the attribute area, here we've got the same thing, folder content attribute, so you can access it in both areas. And again, if you want to create new ones, you go through the normal screens to create your attributes, apply color codes, etc. We've actually enhanced it to make it better, because you can now apply color rules and things. Okay, let's cancel that. The other one is bill of material level attributes, BOM level attributes. For example, position number, quantity, etc. I've got a whole load of other ones that I've added as examples in here. So where previously it was called links, they are now BOM specific attributes or folder content attributes. Okay. The next enhancement on page 4 is DDMC 5785. Administration, new DDM administration page workflow. Well, it's not a new page. All we've actually done here is this is now in here as workflow, and as I showed you earlier, when you click on it, it only opens the workflow editing tool. So just cleaning that up a little bit. Before anybody asks me the question, we would like to move into the new environment. Changing the workflow tools is a massive job, so we're not sure at what point we're going to make that change. Okay, the next enhancement, DDMC 5792, new for page for database. Well, under maintenance there used to be an option called database. What was in there was the ability to delete items from that, not deleted, that's telling you what has been deleted, but on the old database page there was an option to delete files. We've removed that completely because you have the ability to do this through the DDM office based on your access controls. So we wanted to remove it because we thought that it was unnecessary at this point in time. If you want to prevent users from deleting things, you can do that via access controls, and if you want certain users to be able to delete, then again you can do this using the access control mechanism. I might as well show you, if I say access controls in here for parts, documents and drawings, let's say a full control user at all states, ACL selection, and we can delete, you see the final column here, members of this group can delete when something is work in progress, and again you've got all of your options available. Okay. The other one that was in here was purge by state. So in the old database maintenance area was purge. What we've done is we've moved that into where the states are defined. So for example, states for parts, documents and drawings, if I open released, in here we can say how many file versions do you want to keep when you perform a purge. What I mean by file versions, everything in the database. If I look at my recent files, if I look at this part, in here we've got a versions tab, and that is the physical file version behind the database record. Every time you save, it keeps all of the previous saves in this area. So you see here on this part that's still work in progress, it's been saved 3 times. Okay. In this tool here, you have the ability to purge file versions now, and in this case it will only leave 1 file version behind. Okay, if you're running short on disk space, it might be that you want to say, well, for example, at work in progress, purge down and only keep 3 file versions, and then you can click on this button and it will remove all of the other physical file versions beyond 3. Anyway, so the enhancement is we've moved this capability against the state. It makes more sense that it's there rather than in a hidden area in the admin tool. Right, moving on to page 5, BOM management. DDMC 8620, the ability to display latest issues of items in a bill of materials. I'm going to go back to the DDM office tool. I'm going to go back to my workshop folder because in here, I believe in the structure I've referenced this particular assembly here. I can look at it in this window. So if I select this assembly, what we're seeing on the screen here is the bill of materials now. I'm going to size the columns to fit so it's nice and neat. Now, as you can see here, this bearing housing on this part, assembly, let me turn on issue here. So if I bring issue over, so when issue 12 of this assembly was released, it contained issue 77 of this housing. And as we can see that it's since been superseded. we've had requests from several customers that they want the ability, without modifying the structure, to be able to see latest issue. So as you can see, the latest issue of this item is actually issue 85. Okay, and you can toggle this on and off. You cannot leave it on because it needs to be fail safe. So it's a conscious decision to say, show me latest issue. I'm now going to go into the bill of materials for this item. So this is obviously the embedded properties. If I open the bill of materials, in here we can clearly see this item is superseded. We've got an option down the bottom here that says show me latest issues. So we're now looking at latest issues. So just the ability to see a BOM with all latest issues, and that will go all levels deep as well. Okay, I'm going to cancel that, and then the final one is to look at the same in the web. So if I go to DDM web here, I'm going to log in as myself, like so. I'm going to search for a part which I think was 1566. Let me just search for that. There is my assembly. I've got two different ones. This is the one I'm looking for. And if I look at the bill of materials and I look at as a list, again we can see this is superseded. We have the option in here of saying show latest issue. Okay, now we do have another enhancement request in the system where if somebody selects the latest issue view option, that it will pop up a warning so that they fully understand what they're looking at. We will make that warning settable at an administration level, so you as the customer can decide what the message in that warning is going to be. Okay. So the enhancement is to view latest issues of a bill of materials and with the necessary warnings in place. So I'm going to log out of here and come back to here. The next one is DDMC 12687. Would like to be able to view the configuration name in DDM that was used for the preview and the bill of material generation. Now I've got an assembly here. If I hop into my folder again, I have an assembly in here which is the 35393. I'm going to close Solid Edge and I'm going to open SolidWorks. This is a specific thing. It's easier to show you, so let's just wait for SolidWorks to load. It took me a minute for me to get my head around this enhancement and why somebody would want it. And this only relates to SolidWorks users. So if I go back here, if I load this assembly has actually got a number of configurations against it. Okay, so we can see here this assembly contains, let me just change the labels in the tree display here. So I should have done this earlier. We want the component description and turn that off. Apply. Okay, so in our assembly we have a housing, a bearing and a shaft. I've created two additional configurations of the assembly. This one has less the bearing, so I've removed the bearing. If I double click, you see the bearing has been removed, and if I activate this one, the bearing comes back and the shaft has been removed. Now the request was to be able to have an attribute against the parent assembly. And if we look at the attributes here, there is an attribute now called CSI_primary_configuration. If you put a value in there, and you have to manually do this, and that value is the name of one of the configurations, what happens is when you save this assembly back, and you're not saving the configurations in DDM as individual assemblies, so you're still only saving a single assembly, what it will do is it will base the bill of materials on the configuration that you've specified against that attribute. Now, I'm going to come out of here. Don't bother saving that. Clear the decks. Okay, and I'll hop back into here. So if I go back to this assembly and I open the bill of materials, well, let me just do this in a slightly different way. If I click here, you see the thumbnail image is based on the configuration that I specified, the one without the bearing. And if I open the bill of materials, there is a new attribute in here called BOM family member. Now, the BOM family member, I've got here test assembly less the bearing, and therefore my bill of materials is based on that configuration. So we do not see the bearing in that bill of materials. So it's a very specific use model, but it may be useful to you if you have that requirement. Okay. The next enhancement related to the web client, which is DDMC 6449, is a right-click copy URL option. If I go to, let me go to here, and we're going to search on 20377. Okay, the item that I'm looking for is this part. What we've added now on the send to, and we debated as to whether we should call it send to or whether we should call it share, because in modern applications when you're sharing something, that's what people understand. It's not technically 100% accurate, but we may well change that label at some point. What we've added here is the ability to copy a web link. So for this part, now you have an internal web location for DDM and a public, or the option of a public if your IT people have configured that for you. I'm going to use the internal copy link here. I'm going to go back to DDM web and I'm going to log in this time as a sample supplier. If I just paste the URL, in fact, what I should have done, I apologize. What I should have done here, if I log out and just paste the URL, it will ask me to log into DDM. And if I log in, it will take me directly to the item. So this is the item that web link came from. I have access controls to see this item because it's released. I can't see any other related information on this part. So this copy web URL still has to abide by your access controls. I'm going to log out, and another example is the drawing for my 393 assembly. If I select this assembly has a drawing linked to it. Okay, it's work in progress. If I copy web link internal and I hop back here and I paste this in, I have to log in, so it's subject to your valid account. And this time I cannot see the drawing because it's work in progress. So it is subject to access controls. It actually should have showed me a message there. I think I did something wrong. No, I haven't got the URL done correctly. Let me just make a better job of that. 35393. I've got a drawing here. If I copy the web link, I'll go back to here. If I paste it, I get an error message saying the item that you are requesting is not available, subject to access controls. Just to finish off this, if I go to Notepad Okay, and I go into here and paste the URL. This is the URL that you can then paste into an email or however you're corresponding with somebody. Okay, so don't save that, and I'm going to log out as that user. The next one is DDMC 12736, manual send to Enterprise Update Manager. What you can now do, I'm going to log in as myself this time. You can now, for anybody who's not aware, let's say this item, EUM updated. This column that I'm highlighting over on the right-hand side of the screen is, provided you have the right permission, you can send this information to the Enterprise Update Manager, and there is a mechanism where you can push information out to ERP. That can be done automatically on state change, or it can be done manually by certain users. So if you have a part where the material is on a long lead time, you might need to get that into the ERP system to get the material ordered, even if you haven't finished the design. So there's all sorts of reasons why you might need this. So we have this option in the DDM Office client. This enhancement means that I can also do that inside the web client. So if I go in and create a new part, what I'm going to do here is create a new part. I've got my numbering switched on, and I'm going to call this sample part long lead time. Okay, you need to reserve things into a folder, so I'm just going to reserve it to this particular project. And in here, my system is set where you have to provide a category. It's a part, testing samples. I'm going to put it in sample parts and assemblies like this. So I've specified, and I have now created a new part. So this is the part that I've just created inside DDM Web. What I can now do is I now have an option to say send to Enterprise Update. Enterprise Update has been queued. Now that mechanism runs periodically based on your settings in the admin tool. If I go back into here and I look at my recent files, this is the part that I've just created. You can see here that the Enterprise Update field has not been populated. If I refresh the screen continually, at some point that will have gone through the process, and now I can see that that item was updated on the 19th of March, 34 minutes past 2. So the enhancement DDMC 12736 is the ability to manually send to Enterprise through the DDM web client. Okay, page 6 is DDMC 12825. Allow status change for multiple items. Let's go back into the web client. I'm logged in as myself, so I know I will have permission, and I want to go in and look for parts 10.01.0098. So I've got a set of parts in here. Let's view it as a table. We can see here they are all work in progress. I'm going to select all of these, and what I'd like to do is I would like to action reserve to folder. I'm going to reserve all of these into our workshop folder, so they are now all reserved by me. Okay, this enhancement now is the ability to make multiple state changes to the selected items. So I could say I'm going to go to checked, I'm going to put comment all okay, and then change that. And what we can see now is these items have all been checked. So multi-select status change within the web client. And again, if we go back to our workshop folder, what we should see in here is a whole set of parts that we've reserved to this folder and are now at a status of checked. Okay, the next enhancement, DDMC 13010 web client. Would like an admin option to allow restricted web users to download native files as requirements of items that they have the visibility of, but where the child item is not available to them. So the fail-safe by default is that if you're downloading an assembly through the web, you have to have visibility of all of the children, otherwise they will not download. We've been asked for an override on this so that if you say to somebody, I've made the assembly available, it will download everything within that assembly, even if you do not have access control. So it's an override option. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into admin web client general settings, admin. If I go to, let's close these up, system, web client, general settings, there's an option here to say allow restricted web users to download related native files. There's a little hover tool here that explains it a little bit more. Now I've turned that on. Okay, I've got the 39396. So if I, for example, go to our 39396, so I've created this assembly specific to demonstrate. Now in here, this has 3 parts and a drawing, but these items are not available to a specific supplier. Okay, reference to supplier folder. So all I'm going to do here is reference this assembly into this supplier folder, but not the children. If I log in here as a sample supplier, and I look in the folder, what I can see is this assembly in the folder now. Now if I look at the assembly, I'm only seeing the housing and the shaft because that's what I have visibility of subject to the access controls. The override in the admin tool means that if I want to download this assembly, native file, download the assembly. If I open the download zip, inside here, if I just bring this over, what I have in here are the related documents, the assembly, and all 3 parts. So it's an override to allow somebody to download all of the related files. Okay, I'm going to delete that from my local PC. Okay, next enhancement on page 6 is the web client DDMC 12791 refresh timer on web widgets. I need to log in as myself. If I log out and log in as myself, you see here what I have is I have a number of custom widgets that I've added onto my dashboard. I've got one called active suppliers. Okay, if I go into DD, and that says 5. Now if I edit my dashboard in the edit mode, you see here we now down at the bottom have refresh timer. So every 5 minutes this individual widget will refresh itself. Okay, so at the moment it says 5, and if I go to my active supplier folders, this is the supplier folder. If, for example, I was to close this folder off and say OK, I've closed the folder. Therefore, if I refresh my screen, there are only 4 in here. Now, we're not going to wait 5 minutes, but in 5 minutes time, that widget will automatically refresh itself and go down to 4. The reason why we wanted to put this in is because if you've set up a dashboard with any kind of KPIs on it, it will periodically refresh itself. This will become even more useful because what we're working on in the background is the ability to have pie charts and bar charts as widgets on the dashboard of the web client. So this will start to, these are building blocks to do greater things. Okay, that was that enhancement. The next one is DDMC 12275, again related to the web client. And this basically gives us the ability to configure dashboards to deploy to other users. We can see here that this user has has view on suppliers. We've got, let's say, we've got 6 widgets across the bottom here. Now, this user, if I go to that user, okay, and I go to sample, where are we? Sample supplier. This user's default profile, in fact, no, that's not what I wanted. Let me do this a different way. I want to log out as sample oh no, I'm logged in as myself. This is what we want. Log in as myself. I've got 6 widgets across the bottom. In here, against my account, my default profile is the engineering department. Okay. If I cancel from here and we go to profiles, the engineering department uses the default dashboard called engineering management. Okay. Confirm. So what we will now do is we will log out, and you have to log in as the administrator to make these system changes. If I log in as the administrator, you can reconfigure this dashboard completely. Okay, now all I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into, if I'm not sure, I can go to dashboard, select dashboard. I want the engineering management dashboard. This is the one. I'm going to go into edit mode. And I'm going to remove NPD proposed, for example. Remove widget. And I'm going to say save against engineering management dashboard. Like so. There are only now 5 widgets across the bottom. If I log out as the administrator and I log back in as myself, and my default profile says that my default dashboard, when I log in, I now only have 5 widgets across the bottom. So the ability for the DDM administrator to log into the web client, configure a dashboard for all different groups of people or different departments or suppliers, customers, and then to be able to save that against the profile so that when the person logs in, they have a different dashboard to the default. So that was DDM enhancement, DDMC 12275, which is at the bottom of page 6. That's the end of my part of the presentation. I've taken 50 minutes, so I'm going to hand over to Matt Lloyd to do the second half, or the next 60% of the workshop. Good luck, Matt.
No pressure. So we will start off with 12683 on SolidWorks. And the first thing to note is we've added support for SolidWorks 2025. And with that, we've improved the filtering options on the version update tool. So I'll just open that a moment. So now we can restrict by number, we can restrict by source version, so which version you're upgrading from. We can restrict by date ranges, and including things like this week, this month, this year, and we can also specify specific dates. So when you've got a large data set, it's a lot easier to target specific data with the update tool. Next we will have a look at 126 947. So if we jump back over to the SolidWorks environment, we've added a Reserve To button. So you can open items into the CAD environment. Let me just resize this a moment. We can open items into the CAD environment even if they're not reserved to you as a user, and you can confirm it's the correct component before reserving it to yourself, and that follows the standard rules for your access control. On 12822 we've added access to the Bill of Materials editor. So this functions exactly as the Bill of Materials editor in DDM Office, but now you have quick access to it from the CAD environment. We've also added support for external libraries. So we're on 12768, sorry. So for external libraries, the first thing we'll need to do is create a library location. So I've created one here in my working folder. I've called it DDM Library. And then in SolidWorks, we need to use the add file location to point it to your directory. I've already added mine here, but once you've found your directory, once you've confirmed it, we'll have access to it here. And then over in our general settings for the CAD tools, we need to add the location for SolidWorks, for DDM to recognize. So I've already got the DDM library added here, but using the add button again, we can follow the file navigator and confirm our location. And once you've got those in place, we can head over to DDM Office, and I've set up some components here under fixings. So I've got a configured part here, and I can use the send to function, and I can send the native file to the library that I've set up. I've already got this component in there. So we can see I've got the configured part, and I've also got a washer there. If we close this and go back into SolidWorks, so now in the library that I've set up, I'm able to drag in the components, this configured part. I can select the configuration that I'd like, drop those in, likewise with the washer. Now if I start the save at this point, so we can see the two library items are highlighted in grey, and this can be configured for library items in your options tab. You can see that the configured item, it's picked up which configuration it is. When you use the library items, you can't edit these components in an assembly. If you want to modify these components, you need to open them directly from DDM to make the modification, and then you'll need to update your library location. Now, if we just jump over to the admin tool again and have a look at neutral files, we've also added the option on PDFs now to specify your DPI, so you can control the resolution of your PDFs. We can do that in the neutral files. We can also do that for the action server as well. And we now jump over to Creo. So on 10495, would like admin option to be able to set sheet export options. So if I go back into the admin tool under CAD and neutral files and CAD settings and Creo parametric. So here we can now specify whether a DWG or a DXF comes from a model space or the paper space. So I've got these set to model space at the moment. Whilst we're here, we also have the option to select single files for multi-sheet DWGs and DXFs, and we'll look at that in a bit more in a moment. And we also have a new option here to disable the automatic bomb scan on save. So on this drawing I've got 3 sheets, and if we look under tools and then properties, it's a bit bigger. So we've got these 2 properties here for draw DWG sheet and draw DXF sheet, and whichever number we set this to dictates how many of those sheets will be produced as a DWG or a DXF. So we've got the first 3 sheets for the DWG and the first sheet for the DXF. So if we save this, and if we go over to DDM Office and have a look at our attachments, if we open up the DWG, we can see that we've got our 3 sheets selected there. And if we have a look at the DXF, we've got a link to a file there. We'll skip that for now. We only have the single sheet as we specified. So that is 12408 as well. 13001. So I showed before that we can turn off the bill of materials scan on save. We go back to Office. I've got an example here. So I've got an assembly that has the bearing, shaft and bearing housing. We don't have a bill of materials here, and we can't see the structure here. If I load this into Creo, you can see it is an assembly and contains these components. So by default, if we turn this off, you won't get a bill of materials, but we can override that. Going to Tools, and then under Toolkit, we can go to PDM Integrator, and we can select Scan BOM. What we can also do, if you are going to use this option, is we can add that to your toolbar, so you have quick access to it. So that's under Toolkit Commands, and we can add that into our DDM ribbon if required. And now I've scanned that bill of materials. If I complete a save again, and we head back over to DDM, refresh, you can now see we've got a bill of materials and we can see the full structure. Now we will have a look at Solid Edge. So in Solid Edge, similarly to SolidWorks, we've added the ability to quickly reserve items and to edit the bill of materials, and again these follow the same rules as before. So only a couple of changes for Solid Edge. In Inventor, we've added support for iPart tables. So I've got a component here which is not currently saved into DDM. We have a look at Manage. We can look at the iPart table, so we can see the dimensions that I've already defined, and I've created a few components from that. And if we now save this into DDM using the Save iPart table, we'll create an entry for each individual item. So I'll just leave these as part 1 for the moment. And I'll reserve them to my workbench. our second component. What we can see is each part on the iPart table is getting its own entry into DDM. So much like the configured components in SolidWorks, we can use these parts in assemblies, and each one gets its own entry so you can identify it on the bill of materials. Now we will have a look at IronCAD. So on IronCAD, we'll start with 11931. And we are looking at, so we've added the ability to select whether the step files created for assemblies include the whole scene, or if it's just the first part or assembly. So by default this is off, but we can turn that setting on. Then we have 10024, where we'd like the option for an IronCAD assembly which is being marked as treat as part. So what we have here, if you mark an assembly as treat as part, by default it won't generate a bill of materials, but we have the option here to override that. So even though it's marked treat as part in IronCAD, we can still transfer the bill of materials from IronCAD to DDM. And we've also added the version updater for IronCAD. So when you upgrade your IronCAD, you can quickly update all of your files in your database. And we have some of the filtering options as well for IronCAD. Then we have 11447. Would like the ability to open DDM BOM directly from IronCAD. So before we do that, we will start to load an assembly into IronCAD. And one of the first things you'll notice is our load window has changed slightly. So here we have our load window, and we have a clear refresh parameters option. So if parts are modified in the DDM office environment, they will need to be the parameters updating in the CAD environment, particularly when they are mapped parameters. So we have the ability to clear that flag if those files are not accessible by the user opening the assembly. And we have a video, I believe, on YouTube for more information on that. And if we load this in, we get a load summary. So again, we can see the batch downloading of files, grabbing the CAD parameters, and we get a full summary showing us how long this took, how many files were downloaded. And now we are in the IronCAD environment. If we have a look at the DDM ribbon, we've added the reserve to option in IronCAD as well. And we've also added the bill of materials. We've made changes to the export elements as scenes. So what we have here now is we can see that it matches the structure of the assembly in IronCAD, so we can see what we're looking at. We've also got the ability to select all items or individual items if we're exporting these scenes. And with the load changes, if we close this item and clear our working directory, where's my notes? So we've also added the cache clearing, the cache feature. So if I clear the cache here, and head back to DDM and reload this item, so as this is loaded, we cache these files locally, and then each time you clear your working directory, it checks against the cache files before loading directly from the DDM database to speed up the loading process. For our neutral files, we've added the ability to create 3D PDFs. These can also be generated through on user save and through the action server. If we have a look at the drawing for this component, and if we go to the neutral files for this component, we've added the ability, so in fact, if I add a couple more sheets, so what we can do now for DXFs and PDFs is we can specify which sheets will get DXFs and DWGs created. So here I've set the DXF for sheet 1 and a DWG for sheet 2. If I confirm that, you can have a look at the IronCAD options on user save. So we can specify that no DXF sheets are created or DWG. We can specify that all sheets are created, or that no sheets are created unless the user has manually chosen these sheets from the drawings. So I could set those options, and then we would get the DXF for sheet 1 and the DWG for sheet 2. Just close that drawing. What I'll do now is I will reserve this assembly to myself. I'll reserve it to my workbench. And we will start a save process. So we've made a number of changes to the save process. So now we have the single save window. So most of your saves will be completed through this function. So here we can select the drawing and the assembly. We have the options to either overwrite, save these as new parts, as a new issue, or mark these as unchanged. We also have as I demonstrate there, we have the ability to multi-select using the control key. I can hold shift to multi-select, and I can do control A to select all items. We can include and not include drawings. So I've excluded the drawing there. And we can also control if we generate mask properties, neutral files, or thumbnails on each individual save. Under options, we can configure the compulsory attributes, as well as further configure the thumbnails, neutral files, and mask properties, whether they're produced for parts and or assemblies. And we can also turn on and off the save summary. Now, if I go back here and mark this as a new issue, and I will save this into DDM. So this is the save summary, which you won't have seen before as an IronCAD user. So we get a full summary at the top of each step completed during the save process. So we can see the batch uploading of the files. We can see thumbnails being generated. We didn't have neutral files generated for this one. And we can see a summary of how long each step took in the save process. So we can complete this save again. And like I say, we can turn off things like neutral files and mask properties. And when we complete the save, this will improve our save times in larger assemblies. We'll go back into the single save again. And what we can also do in here, I'll include drawings this time. So with the multi-select, I've got the original component marked to be overwritten. I can use multi-select and I can mark these to be saved as new items. And I can mark this item to be a new issue. So we can complete multiple different types of save in a single save window, reducing the number of steps when working on assemblies. Cancel that for now. We will close that. So another tool that has been updated for IronCAD is the Clear Working Directory tool. So this is now an intelligent tool. So it identifies whether parts have been modified locally and not saved back to the database. So these components flagged green have been saved to the database. The red item I haven't saved back to the database, but I have modified, so I shouldn't clear that item, and I should check it and save it to the database if it's needed. Obviously in this case I know I don't require that item. In case we do delete an item that we shouldn't have, we have the option up here to back up the deleted files, and we can specify how long those are kept and how much storage to dedicate to that. And if we need them, we can open up the backup folder here, and we can also manually clear the backup folder when required here. Now for this lot, I'm just going to clear the working directory. And then we've got a change for the AutoCAD import tool. So if we go to data import for the, and we select AutoCAD, and what we've added now is once we've selected our location, we can now analyze XREFs that are contained within the DWGs, and these will be imported as DWGs themselves, so you get the full structure of your imports.